Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Tegan Madge, and I am the Children's Librarian at the Canmore Public Library. As you may or may not be aware, August 10th, 2021 marked the 50th anniversary of the Canmore Public Library. Today, I'd like to tell you our origin story of how the library came to be the community hub that it is today and point out some of our milestones along the way. Interestingly enough, it all started with Anne of Green Gables. In December of 1970, the town of Canmore received a letter from an Australian woman by the name of Margaret Tootle, who wrote them with an idea. She had amassed a large collection of books and curiosities over the course of her life, and she wanted to bequeath them to the town of Canmore and set up a library and museum. Why here? Well, as a young girl, she had read Anne of Green Gables, along with the rest of Ella Montgomery's books, and had formed a strong attachment to Canada. Her attachment only grew over the years as she went on to collect many books on Canada and even created lasting friendships with Canadian pen pals. She dreamed of one day moving to Canada. When she was finally able to visit Canada, she fell in love, especially with the Canadian Rockies. Her visit reaffirmed her desire to live in Canada, and she decided that Canmore was where she would like to spend the rest of her life. She was hopeful that her large amassment of books and treasures could be left to the town for people to enjoy for generations to come. Alas for Margaret, the town ultimately and firmly said no to Margaret's request, citing the many difficulties with public bodies receiving private bequests. The idea for a library, however, had been embraced by council and the community. It was resolved that the town should start the process of creating their own library and library board. So in March of 1971, the process of creating a library was started. First, there needed to be a library board, and volunteers from the community were contacted. All those who were asked accepted, namely Jane Cole, Edna Appleby, Elizabeth Rummel, and Norma Measer. Edna Appleby went on to write Canmore, The Story of an Era, which we have available at the library. Norma Measer went on to become the library's first director. And Elizabeth Rummel, who I'm sure some of you have heard of before, has a long legacy in the Valley. With the board in place and the paperwork filed, Bylaw 96 was brought forward to the town of Canmore. And on August 10, 1971, it was passed unanimously, and the Canmore Public Library was created as an official entity. This did not, however, mean that the library was fully functional and ready to accept patrons. There was still a great deal of work to be done. Elizabeth Rummel enlisted the help of some friends to get the library set up and running. She, along with Betty Hardley, Doreen Toker, Millie Erickson, Jane Cole, and Norma Measer, spent many hours in a cold church basement to get the work done. We are lucky to have letters written by some of these women recounting those early days in their own words, and I'd like to share those letters with you now. The Beginning of the Canmore Library by Betty Hardley. One day, early in 1972, I met Elizabeth Rummel at the post office. She mentioned being busy organizing a library for Canmore. I volunteered the information that I had helped Nancy Boothby in Cochrane during Cochrane's library beginning, and while living in England, we housed the rural library one day a month, so Elizabeth asked me to help her. I went over Tuesdays and Thursdays to the Catholic church basement. We sorted books from boxes lying on the floor. I remember an excess of encyclopedias. At this time, we hadn't opened for business. My neighbor, Doreen Toker, asked me one day where I was working. I have a habit of involving my friends in what I'm enjoying, so Doreen was happy to help too. What a lot of laughs and pleasure we had together in that cold, cold basement. Millie Erickson joined us to type, also Joyce Cole, then Norma Measer. I pay a silent tribute to Elizabeth Rummel for allowing me to be part of the Canmore Library. Very sincere, Betty Hardley. The Beginning of the Canmore Library by Doreen Toker. To the best of my knowledge, the library's beginning was in early 1972. It was very cold weather, and so was the church basement. An electric heater helped, but we worked most of the time in our boots and jackets. Lizzie Rummel, Betty Hardley, and myself unpacked boxes and boxes of books, from beautiful bound hardbacks to pocket novels. We would unpack and sort them into different categories. It was back-breaking and dusty work, and at times very frustrating. But every day had its good times too. People would leave books at Betty's house, so we would load up her car and take them to the church. Getting down the slippery steps to the basement was good for a laugh or two. We always had a coffee break, and Lizzie would tell us funny stories of her early years. Once the books were sorted, Lizzie set up a file system. Betty could type with 2 fingers, so she was elected to type the envelopes and index cards. Every book had to be stamped with the library stamp first. Lizzie would do the file, and the 3 of us would paste envelopes in the books. Most of the books were donated by the local people, and many of the volumes were old but in good condition. After several weeks, shelves were put up. Millie Erickson, who could type with both hands, joined us, and the cards and file went much faster. Norma Measer came about this time. Once the shelves were up and the books were in, it started to look like a library. We were getting new books as well, educational, novels, and a good selection of children's books. More shelves went up and we were in business. Memberships were $1 to join and the staff were the first members. We were all proud of what we had accomplished and Lizzie was thrilled. She had told Betty and I at the beginning that it would grow and expand into a great library someday. I'm glad her dream came true as she was a pleasure to work with and a grand lady. Doreen Toker. The library was first housed in the basement of the Catholic Church, but it wasn't long before it became apparent that this was not an ideal location. By this point, the library was serving patrons, but the space was poorly heated and the stairs leading to the church basement were steep, slippery, and dangerous. The library requested our first move. It only took 6 days for town council to respond, granting their request and authorizing the temporary placement of the library in council chambers. From there, we moved into the west wing of the town fire hall. Unfortunately, we don't have any photos of the library from this era, but we have heard reports that there was a life-size skeleton and a jail cell. If by any chance you have any photos of the library from this time, we would love to add them to our records. The library soon outgrew this space, and by 1978, we were looking for a new, bigger space, ideally one that was designed to be a library. Why do we need more space? For movies and puppet shows, of course. We hope our new library will offer more variety in the way of film and puppet shows, children's story hour, etc., and naturally more space to browse through our book selection. We hope that all of you will find something to your liking there. The library was continuing to grow and expand to serve our community. A new, larger space was needed to be able to offer our patrons all the books, programs, and resources we dreamed of providing. A library that was more than just a large selection of books, which we had and is great, but also a hub of the community. A new building was being planned for downtown Canmore, Creekside Hall, which would be a senior center and library. The library social was held in 1979 to show off the new building, and one Alberta culture minister wrote, "The library portion certainly looks pretty good from the outside, and I can see why you can hardly wait to get into it. I can also see by the number of bottles and evidence that it was a pleasant and profitable occasion." And so in late 1979, the building was ready and we moved into our brand new building alongside the Canmore Seniors Drop-In Center. The November 12, 1981 edition of the Canmore Miner provided a review of the new building. A library is certainly a vital part of a growing community like Canmore and should be a place everyone is at home in. The new library is a comfortable place to browse. No harsh lighting, lots of space, and plenty of windows, including a bay window to view the park from while sitting at the reading table. The children's section is scaled to kid size, with books easily accessible to even the youngest reader. Unlike many libraries, the atmosphere is friendly and the staff seem willing to help. I'm not sure what other libraries the author visited, but it's good to know that the Canmore Library was a friendly place in the 80s, and we strive to still be friendly today. And here you can see the aforementioned children's area and presumably a puppet show in progress. At this time, we had a selection of about 12,000 books to choose from and approximately 1,000 members, which at the time was close to 25% of the population of the town. While the library and the Seniors Drop-In Center was beautiful, it didn't take long before we once again ran out of space and had to move to a larger building. This time we moved to a renovated Alberta liquor store off Main Street, the building that is currently Arts Place. Apparently, the librarians at that time were often asked where the Johnny Walker was filed. Here we have pictures of the ribbon cutting at the grand opening in 1996. As a part of this move, students from LGMS helped form a human chain that passed books from the senior center to the new location behind Main Street. What a great show of community spirit and library supporters. Despite rumors to the contrary, not every single book in the collection was moved this way, only a small part of the collection, but it was definitely a memorable way to mark the occasion. Following true to pattern, we continued to grow over the years and eventually ran out of space in this location as well. So we started looking for another home yet again. We truly love this location, but in the end, we were using the tops of our bookshelves as additional shelving for our expanding collection, and we were packed in like sardines. So in 2013, we moved once more, this time into our current location in Elevation Place. Moving a library is no simple task, and it took us a while to get everything settled and organized to our satisfaction. Neither the cold nor the rain could keep our wonderful patrons away in April of 2013 when we officially opened the doors of our fabulous, spacious new home inside of Elevation Place. When we were finally ready to open our doors, we were surprised and delighted to find a crowd of library patrons waiting in the foyer, counting down the seconds out loud and in unison until our doors were open. Our new location has allowed us to expand even more. We now have a dedicated program room, which we use for author talks, movie nights, story times, craft activities like gingerbread houses, book sales, strong women events, seniors fairs, Harry Potter days, reptile shows, a children's Christmas market, and so much more. In 2019, thanks to the generous contributions of our founding donors, the Binghams and the Friends of the Library, an endowment fund was created. Once the endowment fund reaches a minimum principal balance of $100,000, the Banff Canmore Community Foundation will annually grant a portion of the earnings from the fund to the library in support of its operations. With this endowment fund, we have an opportunity to create a sustainable financial resource for our future. 2020 and the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic proved a challenging time for everyone, the library included. Our doors were shut and we had no one to serve. But like any good institution, we managed to pivot, shift focus, and make the most of it. We kept ourselves busy and entertained with various activities and services. We learned how to use Zoom to deliver our story times virtually. While this certainly did have a large learning curve, it did prove to have some hidden benefits, like allowing patrons to join us from all over the world for their weekly storytime fix. We had families join us from British Columbia, Ontario, and even Switzerland. We learned how to provide curbside pickup services to ensure our patrons could get their books in a safe manner, even though we had to keep our doors shut. We learned to work from home, and without any people in the library, we gave in to some of our long-suppressed urges to play with the books and run around the library being silly. Here you can see us playing book dominoes through the library. I should mention that these were all books that we were discarding from the collection, not brand new books from the shelves. We learned how to edit videos, and we learned that watching yourself over and over while you edit your own videos is a very specific and very special type of torture. We were also able to do some projects that we wouldn't have been able to do while we were open, like rearranging the children's area to provide safer and more comfortable reading area for families and little ones. Just before Mother's Day 2020, the Canmore Public Library organized an appreciation convoy to show support for the residents of the local seniors lodge and those in the long-term care facility, and to thank all of the healthcare workers and first responders for their hard work and commitment to keeping our community safe. While vetting the event to local authorities, we were delighted with requests from the Canmore RCMP Detachment, Bylaw, and Canmore Fire and Rescue to join us. Local media attended, and the convoy was shared on many social media accounts. The Bow River Senior Citizen Lodge invited all residents to watch from their windows or in the outdoor courtyard, and it was wonderful to see them waving back and sharing in the moment. The Canmore Hospital was equally enthusiastic about the drive-by, recording it to share within the building. Many seniors in the long-term care were watching from their windows, and the hospital invited all available staff to join us outside to receive the good wishes. We were moved by their presence, smartphones in hand, recording us to share with their family and friends. We are so proud that the Canmore Public Library was recognized for this effort at our annual Marigold Library System Conference in 2021. Our first ever virtual conference ended with the Making a Difference Awards, in which Canmore Public Library was the winner in the large library category. Now, in the fall of 2021, after a long year and a half that was unlike any we've ever experienced before, we're back. Things look a little different than they did before, and they probably always will. But it fills us with so much joy to see patrons back in the library space, using the computers, browsing the stacks, sharing a story with a wee one, or enjoying a newspaper or magazine in our reading area. We have patrons to serve again, and the library has come back to life. The past month have challenged us in ways we couldn't have imagined. We survived lots of ups and downs, government-mandated closings and openings and closings and openings and closings again, policy changes and updates, and the list goes on. But we also learned a ton, and one thing was made abundantly clear. We love our patrons and we love our community, and we love to be here for them, especially during the hard times. Many patrons have reached out to tell us what a lifesaver the library has been for them during the pandemic. Curbside Pickup for reading materials, help finding their next read when they couldn't browse the stacks on their own, or online programs that their child looked forward to each week provided a continued connection to their community. We hope you all know how much being able to serve you, albeit in a very different way, was a lifesaver for us as well. It's taken us 50 years, 4 moves, and thousands of books, and many, many hours to get us where we are today. We've grown our collection, our staff, our programs, our offerings, our memberships, our space, and we will continue to do so for the next 50 years and beyond to serve our community in a meaningful way. I hope you will agree that we have lived up to Elizabeth Rummel's aspiration that the Canmore Public Library would one day grow and expand into a great library. Thank you for your time. We'll see you at the library.